The last few years have been very friendly for everyone's favorite neighborhood wall crawler. The blockbuster films have been pretty well received, and alongside them was one of the best animated movies in the last couple of years, with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. On the game side of things, Marvel's Spider-Man offered one of the best Spider-Man experiences in a very long time, and it was one of my favorite games in 2018 overall. Now, with the launch of the PS5, fans of Spider-Man get another stellar experience in Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Go time.
Spider-Man Miles Morales is a continuation of Insomniac's 2018 title, albeit with a focus towards the much greener Miles Morales as Spidey. With the success of Into the Spider-Verse, it isn't much of a surprise that we get to see Miles Morales gain a starring role, and for the most part, he lives up to that spotlight. After the events of Marvel's Spider-Man, Peter Parker takes Miles under his web and teaches him how to control his new powers. After a chaotic encounter with the Rhino that kicks off the game, the OG Spider-Man heads off overseas for a vacation, leaving Miles to protect the city that never sleeps.
A billboard's been taken over by the underground. I think there's more to it.
Spider-Man Miles Morales doesn't have the big name villains that highlight the story, as it instead closes in on more personal dilemmas involving Miles. That makes the narrative feel closer to an origin story than anything else, as much of the conflict revolving around Miles focuses on family, friends, and his community. It's hard not to compare this title to a 2018 game, and it doesn't quite offer the same blockbuster storyline that Marvel's Spider-Man put together. While that may disappoint some, I did enjoy the more personal adventure that players take with Miles. The game is really focused on the impact bonds between those you know can have on people and communities. It is a closer to home story that didn't wow me, yet was still engaging throughout the 8 to 10 hour experience.
Hi.
Finn, this is Genki, my friend from Brooklyn Visions Academy. Genki, this is Finn, my best friend.
Miles Morales also feels pretty heavily influenced by Into the Spider-Verse. You can really tell the game wants to instill the same mood and style that captured people with Spider-Verse. It even includes a Spider-Verse suit that imitates the look of the movie, which is really cool. I think the game tries a little too hard at times to imitate the film, yet does do enough new to not make it feel like a wannabe Into the Spider-Verse game, which would be honestly super cool to have. But this game is about as good as you can get without just copying Spider-Verse. Miles' journey is definitely worth experiencing, yet what really made Marvel's Spider-Man one of my favorite games of 2018 was the action of swinging through the city and busting up baddies. Spider-Man Miles Morales doesn't change much from that great formula, yet adds enough to still be refreshing. Swinging, jumping, running, and maneuvering through New York City is every bit as good as you might remember it being. With the additional power of the PS5, the game looks better and runs smoother than its predecessor, which makes it feel as good if not better to play. While Miles might still be a little newer to being Spidey, which is reflected in some of his swinging and takedown animations, his new abilities give extra depth to moving around and fighting. Just swinging around the city can be more than enough fun, at least for me. Which goes to show how well Insomniac has implemented traversing as Spider-Man. New York City hasn't changed much at all since the last game, but that doesn't hurt much of all the joy of moving around and taking the sights. The game taking place during the holidays does help change the look of the city a little bit though. I could attempt to explain why swinging around with Spider-Man is so great, but I think the animation and experience it for yourself should be more than enough. The same can be said of combat, which, like the traversal, hasn't changed much from the previous game, yet Miles' new powers help add more visual flair to fights. Combat remains much the same, with a focus on constant movement and enemy management. Much of the same enemy types from the last game come back again, though with new elements to them. Much of the game's combat encounters feel very familiar, but the majority are well balanced and designed. It definitely feels like Insomniac got a good idea of what works best with encounters after the first title, and much of Miles Morales is a good example of that better understanding. Miles Morales as Spider-Man isn't the same Spidey as Peter Parker's Spider-Man. Miles has bioelectricity and the ability to go invisible, which provides some new elements to stealth and combat encounters. Miles' abilities don't completely change how combat flows, but they are a visual treat to watch on screen. The Venom attacks are a fun addition and do a great job of adding more visual flair to the action. Not to mention, Venom punching someone off a roof is really satisfying.
The problem is your nasty neutron reactor. The solution is me wrecking it. Just like that.
Spider-Man Miles Morales feels like more Spider-Man from Insomniac Games, which is more good than bad. Not much of the experience is totally new or fresh, as missions and activities will be very familiar for those who have played Marvel's Spider-Man before. If you enjoyed collecting items, doing stealth and combat encounters, and other similar tasks from the first game, then you will likely enjoy it again. If not, then not much will likely change for you. As a kickoff for the brand new PS5, Spider-Man Miles Morales is a great first experience for the new console. The game doesn't revolutionize, but just continues what Marvel's Spider-Man started a few years ago. It doesn't overstay its welcome and offers players a good side story and experience before the next true sequel. Insomniac's Spider-Man universe has two great Spider-Men leading it, and I'm really excited to see where the journey will take both Peter and Miles. Overall, Spider-Man Miles Morales is a great launch experience for PS5 owners and a great continuation for a series with a bright future.
Oh, hey, Spider-Man!
This conspiracy is wild. Hey! No way he's...
Feel free to like, share, or subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And as always, thanks for watching.
Just turned me from Spider-Man into a Spider-Fan.